Hey there! Welcome to Lost Piñata, the podcast where we talk about navigating your creative lifestyle. I'm Dave.
And I'm Terrence. And if you enjoyed this episode, please like, follow, and share the program with your friends. So, what will we be talking
What
about
will we,
today?
Willy Wonka, be doing today?
What are we talking about today, Dave?
Today, as many of you know, this podcast comes after we used to do a podcast called Heroic Origins, where we would create a new superhero every episode, roughly. And then we went off and did a bunch of other stuff. Like we were building a comic book
Right.
at one point. Well, we used to have episodes that we would call superhero sidebars. And that would be where we would talk about, instead of creating a superhero, we'd just talk about superhero or comic book related topics. And we thought, I was suggested that it might be fun to do a superhero sidebar episode for Lost Piñata.
And I concurred. I thought that's a great idea because we can do what we want. It's our podcast.
That's right. So everybody get ready because it's time for superheroes. That's right.
Very nice.
All right. So, okay. So this is the idea that I pitched to Terrence. I wanted to know, take some standard superhero powers, right? I mean, the standard superhero power set is what? Super strength, flight, some form of invulnerability,
Yeah.
maybe some sort of power blast or something. What else would you consider to be kind of standard cliched superhero powers?
Cliched. Yeah. I mean, you're being bulletproof. Yeah. Super strength, flight.
I mean, let's be honest with you. Most superheroes have super strength, can fly. They have some sort of durability, right?
Right.
Those are all, yeah.
Yeah. So. I mean, I think that covers it. I mean, beyond that, you start getting into more elaborate ideas of like what they can do.
Yeah. What they can't do. So I wanted to talk about like the power of flight and sort of be like, what are the more interesting depictions of that power? I mean, Superman, he flies. There's no real reason for it. He just flies.
Right.
I mean, that's true for the vast majority of them. Same would be for Captain Marvel. Somebody like, I don't know, Rogue with the X-Men. She just flies,
Right. Well, she got that flight power from Captain Marvel, who just flies.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's like most people just sort of fly, and there's nothing really interesting about it. They just fly. But I was thinking, like, what are the more interesting depictions of that power? And actually, talking about Rogue from the X-Men, think about Storm. Storm has a much more interesting way of flying.
Right, yeah. She uses the wind currents to lift her and fly her. But, where do those wind currents come from in the first place? It's always been a question.
Well, that's her power, is she creates.
Yeah, but she creates.
But the power stunt. I think that's what's interesting, is that her power is not flight. Her power is manipulating the wind. The weather, which involves the wind.
But just creating wind is... I'm not going to get lost. I'm trying not to get lost in that, but just creating wind.
I sense you wanting to go on a tangent. Why would you?
What is weather?
Have you ever? What is weather?
Wind isn't weather.
Sure it is. What do you mean?
Okay. I'm trying not to go too far.
Anyway, the point is that whatever she does, maybe she's controlling just barometric pressure, which creates wind. But she's able to do that, and that's a power stunt. What she does, she's lifting people up with the currents.
Right.
So that's an interesting depiction of flight. When I was thinking about this, I was thinking about somebody like, in contrast to Superman, somebody like Thor. He's got, and Terrence, if you want to go on a tangent on this is good. This is pretty nonsensical. But Thor, he actually twirls his the hammer around, throws it, then holds on to it, and that's how he flies.
But I like that. But what I don't like is like they never really depict it like that. I mean, he's really flying once he's got it in motion, and he also,
it's a magic hammer, so
Yeah, I mean, exactly. So it's a magic hammer. So that's
this makes me wonder. We know that Thor's hammer will come back to him if he throws it, right? So it flies on its own. It has its own. But like, I'd like to see Thor just have, like, telekinesis over his hammer, right? It's just he throws it on while it's coming back, it's just going bam, 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 hitting all the people on the way back or something like that.
Hmm.
Nobody's
Well,
done that, it's probably stupid, that's the type of power creep that people would complain about.
yeah, it's like, I guess in that sense, like if he's like to stop flying or being hurled through the air with his hammer, does he just then call it back and it's like right in his hand right there? Like, is that what he like? How does he?
This is a good question, but that would be an interesting. I wonder if they've ever explored it that detail because that makes sense because he's holding on to the strap, right?
Yeah.
He's holding on to the strap at the end of the hammer, so that would make sense. Yeah, I like it. There you go. If we ever get a chance to write Thor, we can make that canon.
Yeah. I know other characters flight. Because I was thinking of Storm and you went right for her. So now
Oh, sorry.
I'm trying to think of somebody. Well, we were talking before we started the show. We were talking about the Vision and his
Oh.
density, using density to fly.
That's right. It's a huge trade-off in his part because he's controlling his density. And I don't know how he controls the direction he goes, if you want to get off on tangents, because he's just making himself lighter and featherier. So
Well, he has a computer brain to make himself a little bit more dense this way, a little more dense that way.
yeah, but if there's a gust or something, I guess that's true. You're right. You're right. And he's got a cape. Can he
Yeah.
make does he able to make the cape dense while the rest of his body isn't? And sort of that controls it? Maybe. Does he
Yeah,
have that kind
maybe.
of control? I mean, he must control. That's part of his body,
Yeah,
presumably,
yeah.
because he
So
controls he's not like Kitty Pryde where he can, turn people intangible. So the cape must be part of him.
right.
Actually, that's Kitty Pryde is interesting. She does something similar, but what she does is she basically walks on air.
Yeah, I was gonna say she doesn't fly though. She
She doesn't
totally
really
walks.
fly. But I mean, walking on air is kind of like flight.
Yeah, like what's his name? Graviton, the villain.
Uh-huh.
He just manipulates gravity, but he stands on. Doesn't he like stand on something that he just makes anti gravity, and then he floats around on like.
Yeah.
Am I thinking of the
Yeah.
right guy?
Yeah, he does that. You're right.
Okay.
He
Okay.
does that. Yeah, yeah. Well, yeah, that's interesting. There's a whole bunch of people who they fly by manipulating other things. I mean, well, I guess Magneto does it by affecting the magnetic currents, but he could do the same thing. He'd stand on a asteroid or something.
Yeah.
It's making me think of Terrax, the Herald of Galactus.
Hmm.
And he would do that. He'd control the Earth, and because he could control the Earth, he would stand. He wouldn't fly per se, but he would stand on a rock, and then move the rock.
That was one of those things with telekinesis I was thinking about, where there are some people because it's basically picking yourself up.
Yeah,
And so some people like couldn't do that because the mental leap of literally picking yourself up to
yeah.
hurl yourself through space was which makes sense to me. Like it's kind of weird to think that you could pick yourself up and you're
Hey,
not the leverage point.
mind over matter, pal.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then but then you've got people that look like they're flying but aren't, like the Invisible Woman. Because she can create those little invisible platforms that she runs around on.
No, she can't. I thought she could fly.
She's not actually. Well,
I thought she made herself like those like float or something. Because she could. Well, I guess it makes
no, those are actually anchored to she does. She basically does what Iceman does,
okay.
but she's using her invisible force fields.
Huh. Okay.
So the invisible force fields are moving, but they're still attached to the ground,
Huh.
boosting her up. At least that's how it used to be. They may have changed that. Yeah.
So.
So
I know,
the
who else?
Human Torch. Here, you
Also,
want to talk about
guys,
nonsensical? You want to talk about nonsensical? The idea is that he becomes, lighter than air because he's on the flame stuff, or maybe it creates gusts that lift him up. Of course, the question then is like, well, how can he breathe? There's all sorts of nonsensical stuff going on there.
I mean, I don't know. I guess part of his power set is he doesn't have to breathe, right? I mean, anytime they cut off oxygen, his fire goes out, and suddenly it's a problem. So.
That's yeah. So something's going on. I don't know. Well, I don't know if fire feeds off of oxygen, then maybe he's just sort of breathing the same way the fire is breathing.
That makes sense
Maybe
too.
he's actually breathing through the fire. There we go. We are solving so many problems right now for these superheroes.
I mean, a
What?
lot of them, like I think, the energy-based characters. Well, I'm just thinking like, well, actually, I guess before he knew he was an energy-based character, Wonder Man,
He couldn't
where
fly.
he had the little rockets.
Yeah, yeah, the little rocket
He had the
thing.
little rockets that were tapping into his ionic power to to power them.
Oh, was that what it was? How they worked?
Yeah, because he was like
Oh,
basically like a battery for his rocket
that's pretty
pads.
cool. That's pretty cool.
So that was neat. Yeah, but
Let's see. What
ultimately,
about
it's like he's made of the energy, so he could just fly. So
okay? And not and of course we're just talking about. Oh, we didn't talk about Cannonball. Cannonball was the one of
oh
the
yeah, that was the
inspirations
first
I
one that
had.
you. Yeah.
Cannonball is really interesting to me because he's propulsive. He's like blasting,
Mhm.
like a rocket, and it's hard for him to maneuver. Or at least originally it was. I think he can maneuver now, maybe. And he gets like temporary invulnerability to facilitate his flying. Anyway, I just think that's an interesting combination of powers to put together. So, and we haven't talked anything about people with wings.
Oh well, I
It's
mean, they're
more
kind of.
interesting than what Superman does.
They're kind of self-explanatory. Well,
Yeah.
actually, I think of Angel, and like they had two different ways that he flew. Because like when he had bird wings, he was
Uh-huh.
flying, but when he had the bladed wings, he was actually like rocket propelled because
Oh, really?
somehow, yeah, he
Oh,
wasn't
interesting.
flap. Apparently, he didn't have to flap his wings. They were like he was flying with wings. So I don't.
That's maybe like a glider or something.
Yeah,
That's lame.
but
Okay, I'm
anyway,
not lame, but I mean, it's like
I
it's sad.
mean, but yeah,
Angel should have just.
he did like he could like hover, I guess, stuff like that. Where
Well, we could talk a little bit about how superheroes who only have flight are not. So many people have flight. Somebody like the Angel is not special.
yeah,
He's
yeah,
actually considered a liability because those wings take up a lot of
yeah.
space.
There's
Um,
a
they're a target for villains, to attack.
there's a character in My Hero Academia, the anime, and his power, I forget what his name is now. Oh, I can see him in my mind, but he has wings and he can fly. But what's really cool about him is like is that all of his feathers he can control to fly. So he can use them to go help other people. Like he can send his feathers to go like pick up people.
Oh, very
So
cool.
he rescues people with his feathers.
Oh, that's awesome.
So yeah,
That's
it's
very inventive. I like
yeah,
that. I like
yeah.
that.
So
Yeah, see, I kind of feel like there's some of these powers have just become routine. Flight is something that so many
yeah,
characters have, and even just like you think in DC universe, they've got the Legion of Superheroes and their flight rings, right? And
yeah.
it's just like it's kind of boring,
Which I honestly though I thought that was clever, just to have like a team like uniform thing, a unifying team that actually has a function. It's like
No, it
why
makes
would
sense.
everybody be dressed alike, or why would everybody? I mean, I don't know. There's to build
No,
that
it
in.
makes sense. I mean, eventually we're going to be able to, eventually we all will have, we'll all have flight rings. I mean, that's probably true.
But if we could all like, if your whole team can benefit from like, like why doesn't Iron Man make suits of armor for everybody?
I mean, he has plenty of suits of armor, right? I mean,
Yeah,
it's like he's sort of hoarding them. He's got like 20 different suits of armor, and it's like he
but
could give
like
us
yeah, he's
here,
like, no,
Cap.
this is only
Cap's
my
very good.
power. You have to do your own.
That's right.
It's like we're a team, right? We
Well,
could
he's,
all
he's a
benefit.
businessman. He's a businessman. He doesn't want to give out proprietary technology.
So,
You're like, oh well,
you know,
I don't know if I trust you, Cap. You might actually let some of that slip off to the enemy or something.
yeah. But
Um,
I just think like yeah, they're. I always like the idea of like the flight rings. That was a
no,
useful thing
it
that I
makes sense.
thought.
Sharing,
Yeah.
you know,
So
no, it makes a lot of sense. It makes a lot of sense. But I guess what it is superpowers. I just wish there was more inventive reasons for why they work. I
mhm.
kind of I'd like to create a universe where there are superpowers, but there's never a duplicate superpower. You
Mhm.
know, it's
Yeah.
sort of, I mean, if you do have flight, it can't just be flight. It has to be because of wings, or it has to be because of a rocket, or it has to be because of this, but it can't just be like generic flight. And
Right.
so every superhero or supervillain would have to have a different mechanism for why they're doing it.
Yeah. No,
Um,
I have a story based on superheroes, and actually, it's a part of our little universe from
the
back in
mighty
the
bulwarks.
yeah. So it was, but it's like I needed an explanation for why people could fly, and because it's like I need to figure out like why can people fly, because like I've got people with a rocket pack and he can fly,
Uh-huh.
and then I've got a guy who has magic and that's why he can fly, and it's like, well, why can these guys fly? There's nothing. And so what I realized is, well, they had to be linked to some interdimensional thing, and that would be that they're basically repositioning themselves between the universes, and that's how they fly, basically.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
Like pushing yourself through multi-dimensional space in a way without leaving the dimension you're in, but you can use that connection to reposition yourself in our world. So,
Well, I like that. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
so
There's yeah, yeah. Well, so there's a lot of ways. So that basically there are a lot of inventive ways that people are able to fly. But there's a lot of uninventive ways. There's a lot of ways that people are they're just flying.
well, they just don't explain it at all. It's like, oh,
Yeah,
they can just fly. It's like you said, mind over matter. So,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
you know,
Uh, did we want to talk about strength or anything
yeah.
else?
Well,
Okay.
how do you talk? How when it comes to something like strength? I mean, everybody is just super strong. I mean, and
There's more interesting. I mean, the Hulk is much more interesting super strength than Superman.
right,
You know,
right. But I
because
mean,
he's
the Superman. I mean, he absorbs sunlight and becomes and gains his powers. So
well, that's the source of his. That's true.
yeah,
So we know exactly where it comes from.
right. And
But
like the Hulk, I mean, how he gets angry and gets strong because of gamma
sure,
radiation,
I mean that's a
right?
little bit more interesting. But I
Well,
think somebody like Sunspot is you
well,
know
Sunspot is kind of like an answer to Superman. Like
he is
he
kind of like Superman.
absorbs sunlight and he gets strong. But
Well, actually, there's sort of that's kind of interesting. Like if you were to take Superman's powers and just distribute, like basically say there was like Superman's like the Tower of Babel, and they split him into a million different superheroes, so that everybody just had one of his power sets or something.
mhm,
Um, then Sunspot would be one of those characters, right?
mhm.
He'd be a super strong guy that absorbs the sun, and
Sunlight,
that's his only power. He's not invulnerable. He can't fly. Well, he can fly now, and
now he can fly
he's got too many powers now.
stuff. But
Yeah,
he used to just be super strong
yeah,
and turn to and look really cool. So,
yeah.
that's just-
I don't think his current design is necessarily as cool as the old one, but
they aren't as good. They don't make him fully like, because he would just be like completely blacked out. Like he was. I always thought that was cool because just that with the like the or the Kirby dots, whatever.
yeah, yeah, yeah. The Kirby crackle. So what are some other innovative, super strong people? Isn't there somebody who can the way that they control the density of other things, and so they're able to lift things? I guess it's the from Power Pack.
Oh,
There was
not what
the
not
gravity
my,
power kind of went back. The gravity control power bounced back and forth, but
okay.
that was one of the things is that the guy, I think it was Alex Power, was originally able to use the gravity to be able to lift things and throw them or whatever, and so they would lift them up by reducing the gravity, but then throw them, and then they would, after he was no longer touching them, they would become heavy again.
Huh.
Yeah, yeah. So that's an innovative way to use super strength.
I know this is just reminding me of characters from like our Marvel gaming.
Bring it up, yeah.
Well, it was SPAC. Do you remember? His name was SPAC.
I don't remember SPAC, but tell me, how did it work?
He would make people weightless for just the moment that he made contact with.
Oh,
So he would run into people, he would punch them, and they'd fly like several areas away and take
okay. I don't
damage
remember that. That's
and take damage from them hitting the ground. And so
There's a
They
lot
take
of
like,
damage you can do from just lifting somebody up and dropping them. So,
well, yeah, and that
yeah.
was it basically. That was his whole power set. Was he spat.
So who are some boy? I'm actually struggling here a little bit. Who are some characters that have interesting um, super strength?
So I don't see as much with strength. Honestly, they're just people who are just
They're
strong.
just
Like,
strong. Yeah, I mean it's like kind of boring. What are some interesting ways that strength could be? I mean, there's people that get like strong because they're drawing power from the earth. Like who was the Greek
well,
mythological character?
the Greek. I'm
It doesn't really, but they're a superhero. There's a superhero I think that I think it was actually somebody Hercules fought. That was as long as they were touching the earth, they would
okay.
be strong. But it's like the way he defeated him was by lifting him off the ground and punching him.
I was thinking about Namor from the Atlantean,
Oh,
like because
he's
like
got to
his
be
thing was
moist.
like the water and all that. Like, and as long as he didn't dry out, he was
When
super
he's
strong.
wet, he's
Yeah,
strong.
yeah.
Yeah. Uh, but I'm trying to think of like, I mean, are there people that have? I mean, I guess you got Iron Man with the hydraulics, going with
Yeah.
his strength there. I don't know. I think they really haven't come up with enough interesting ways to depict super strength.
In the Avengers movies, at least, I don't know if this was always a function of the Black Panther, but like how he was absorbing kinetic energy. That was a
That's true, but he
oh,
was using it in a wide variety of ways. I don't even know that he used it for strength. That was like the repulsive.
yeah,
You get
yeah.
that
But
would.
I mean, to me, that was kind of like a then he could push something. Really, he could hit something.
Oh, I thought that was just a
Yeah, he
way
did use it as a, but I think he like didn't he throw a car or something or push off a car and crush it or do something like that. I don't know. That's what I'm in my head thinking.
I don't
But he
remember.
could do. So that would be a
He
way to
could, yeah,
do it.
you could probably use it that way. Yeah, yeah. Well, there's Sebastian Shaw. That's actually great. There's an example. Sebastian Shaw, the Black King from the Hellfire Club. His power was to absorb kinetic energy. So people would punch the crap out of him, and he would just get stronger and stronger and stronger. So that's actually a great one. That's a great
Yeah.
example,
Okay.
and that's kind of along the lines of what you're talking about with the Black
Well, I
Panther,
guess that's not the
but
same.
it was more explicitly detailed there.
I was thinking about I guess that it would be more of the invulnerability if you wanted to talk about that, like the way people would are resistant to being hit because
That's true.
that made me think of because it wasn't obviously it's not strength, but being able to take a bunch of punches and then keep going was like Mad Rock's Multiple Man, how he just used to if you hit him really hard,
That's
more of
right.
them would pop out.
That's right.
It was and so it was kind of like that was a cool way to be resistant to damage was
Well, one of our characters, which was Ishraq, the Unseen, I can't remember what the Glass Ghost. What's his actual character's name?
are
I
you sure
can't
that's
remember.
not what it was? That's where it's like it was something like
Well, but his power was what I loved about it is he had basically breakaway glass. He could create like he was fragile when he was invisible,
right.
but he could create these crystalline structures and use them as armor. So that what it would do is like if you were to punch him or something, then he wouldn't be invulnerable per se, but it would be like one layer of glass would or crystal would break, and that would save. It'd be like if he had 5 layers of glass,
Right.
then whatever the power punch was, it would just destroy one shield,
Mm-hmm.
and so he would have like 5 very fragile shields,
Yeah.
but it would still take 5 punches or something like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. So
Um, so you got people that absorb stuff. You've got oh well, Wonder Woman originally she's invulnerable now, right? But she used to have the
yeah, yeah, yeah. The
bracelets.
bracelets.
That was a cool way. She was using her super speed basically to protect herself.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
I was thinking like somebody like the Blob, who
Oh, great one. Yeah.
I guess he was invulnerable still because like you could, but like people would punch him and he would just
Yeah, yeah.
they'd be stuck in him. Oh,
Well,
Man Thing actually, that's
uh-huh.
completely invulnerable because he's made of slime and sludge.
That's right. That's right.
Like that was always fun. He had a fight with what was it with Master of Kung Fu. who like
Did he have a fight with Shang-Chi?
yeah, who just like kind of kicks through him, like stuff like that, where it's like, how do you fight the muck monster? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Uh,
So those are some interesting ways to be invulnerable, to be strong, to fly. Um, I don't know. So I'm just saying to all you comic book creators out there, come up with more interesting ways to depict these powers.
yeah. Yeah.
All right. Well, maybe that's a good way to wrap up for our
I,
superhero sidebar. Hold on. What is it that we were just listening to?
Superheroes.
All right. Now, I guess what's our script here, Terrence?
oh,
How
did we
do we
want
sign
to?
off?
Oh, I thought we were going to sign off just with that.
Oh, well, we could in the edit, but hey, that's it for this episode. If you enjoyed it, be sure to like, follow, and share the program with your friends. Also, check out my other podcasts, Raw Songwriting, Sleepy Tales and Slumber Tunes, and my movie review show, Mr. Waz. That is movie reviews with original songs.
Now it's time for you to whack your own pinata and see what shakes out.
Now get lost.
Eat it.
Oh, I guess I got to do the outro.